Okay, good afternoon. I'm going to call the meeting to order. As it stands, the city assessor has been delayed, so we're going to recess the hearing until such time as the assessor is available. So we'll stand in recess for now. Thank you. Thank you. We will reconvene the hearing. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory and the traditional homeland of the Métis Nation. My name is Neil Harden. I'm chairing today's meeting. With me is Robert Hutchins to my left and Doug Marks to my far left. The assessor today is Kem Wong and the recording secretary is Katie Sutherland. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rule in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The matter for which revision is requested has been described in each application, and we'll limit discussion to those matters. The statements that the applicants and the assessor make at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. We advise the comparison of assessments of property is not considered evidence of market value by the board. The board is appointed annually by council and is independent of it in the city administration. It makes its decisions on the basis of the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible. Please note that the board's decisions with respect to an application may be appealed to the Manitoba Municipal Board if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or to the Court of Queen's Bench if the matter pertains to the application of exemptions from taxation. Should you wish to appeal, information on how to do so will be included with the board's order. With respect to the hearing process, I will confirm the matters to be addressed with each applicant following swearing in. We will then have the assessor's testimony followed by questions the applicant may have, and then the applicant's testimony followed by questions. Each side will have an opportunity to summarize if they wish. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The process will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. You will receive the order by registered mail as soon as possible. This information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of the public record. Can you swear me, please?
Kem Wong.
Do you affirm that the evidence you represent is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes.
Jared Story.
Do you swear that the evidence you represent is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. Thank you.
Okay, so the first property in this afternoon's docket is 785 Dorchester Avenue. So you can begin this one.
The subject property is 785 Dorchester. The roll number is 120-225-775-00. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It was built in 1912, but we have an effective year built in 1945. There are 25 suites with no outdoor parking. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rent of $1,228 to get a potential income of $368,000. Use a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $359,000. And use a 47% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $190,000. Kept at 6.6% from an estimated market value of $2,889,000, which is about $115,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents we've used are in line with what's on the market, might be a little bit higher end of the range of market. On the bottom of page 4 are repair and maintenance comparables. The subject property repair and maintenance is a lot higher than normal, so I think there's capital expenditures in there. So we're going to, in applying market repair and maintenance, if you go to page 5, their estimated operating income is to be about $203,000, which is higher than what the model is estimated at $190,000. Page 6 is information on how we derived our cap rates. Our cap rates going forward is 7.3%, with most of them falling between 4.9 and 5.3%. On page 7 are some cap rate sales. The purpose of showing these capitalization rates is to illustrate the accuracy of the model and to substantiate the model-derived capitalization rates. You can see the sample that we provided. We have a range of 4 to 6%. And on the bottom of page 7, there's the sale for 500 4H. The NOI for that subject property was $2.8 million, and it sold for $70 million, which yields a blended cap rate of 4.07%. On page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 10 are some pictures of the subject property. Appears to be well kept, and some renovations. Page 11 to 13 are the income statements provided by the owner. So the repair maintenance is pretty high for those years, and they're averaging for 2017 it's $4,500 per unit, which is a lot higher than what is normal. So in adjusting to a more market repair and maintenance, the operating income supports the model, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $2,889,000.
Any questions?
Yes, I do. Just a few. Thank you. Okay. So this assessed value of $2,889,000 constitutes a 16% increase over the last cycle. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Now, it was $2,494,000. A 16% increase. Does that not seem high to you? Would that not raise a red flag when you're reviewing this file?
No, that appears to be what market values have gone up by, as far as I can tell.
16%? Okay, that's fine. Now, this is Panama Quartz, right?
I'm not sure if that's the name of the building.
Have you visited this building?
I have not.
You haven't been inside the building. Okay, now it was built in 1912, and the city has applied an age variance of 1945. Can you give me a sense of what would precipitate that change?
Maybe some renovation work or upgrades to the building.
Okay, did you search for any permits on this building?
I did not.
Okay, so that's likely an opinion versus an adjustment based on actual permits being taken out. Is that correct?
Yes, it's the assessment department's view of the effect of your bill.
Okay. All right. So we have no parking associated with this building. Is that correct?
That's what we don't have any parking indicated.
Okay, yet we have a large amount of 3-bedroom units, correct?
About half, yes.
Yeah. So would you say it's typical to have no parking, but a large mix of 3-bedroom units?
I'm not sure how typical it is, but there are buildings that have adequate parking and some that have no parking.
Okay, but a 3-bedroom apartment, we would assume that there might be parking associated with the building. Okay, that's fine. Now, page 3 of your brief, are all of these inputs modeled?
I believe they are.
I believe they are. Did you not say that you overrode the expense ratio?
The expense ratio, it doesn't appear to be one of the standard. It might have been overridden
Right.
to more accurately reflect the subject property.
So would you agree that generally when we see a round number like that, it's probably somebody has adjusted it?
Potentially, yes.
Okay. Now, would you say that expense ratios in older buildings generally tend to be higher than they are in newer buildings?
I would say that, yes.
Okay. And would you say that expense ratios are generally a function, or that there's an interdependence between a rental rate and the amount of repairs and maintenance? So if you spend more on your building and you keep it in better shape, you're likely going to get higher rents. Does that seem logical to you?
I'm not sure.
Okay. Okay, so what I'm suggesting is, let's see this. This building is achieving relatively high rents, is it not? Higher than what the model is indicating from a potential gross market scenario, is it not?
Yes.
Okay. So would it not lead you to believe then that this owner is having to bear a substantial repair and maintenance costs in order to subtend that income? Would that not seem logical to you?
Yes, I haven't observed any buildings that require that high levels of maintenance on a regular basis. But I mean, if you're able to,
Well, look at your photos.
Yeah.
Right? This building is in excellent condition. The rents are reasonably high, and it's 107 years old. So it would lead us to believe that a high repair and maintenance budget is appropriate. So adjusting it downwards, those components don't work together when you do that, I'll suggest. Okay, so now I'm looking at your summary. Now what you've done here, it appears, is you've stabilized the expenses, which depresses them, and then you've taken the most current year's income stream, which inflates that number. So you end up with a higher stabilized NOI than had you done a line-by-line adjustment. Is that correct?
I just felt it was appropriate to use their 2017 income to try to stabilize, because it doesn't appear that they're going to be receiving any sort of less income. So, and to stabilize the expenses, I took the average of the expenses, which I feel is reasonable.
Okay, but if you use the methodology that you've used on the expenses for the income, you end up with 344.4 and an NOI of 189 versus your 203. Are you aware of that?
If you calculate it that way, yes.
Yeah. Okay. Now you're using a 6.6 cap on this building,
Yes.
and that's primarily due to age, I'm guessing?
Yes.
Yes? Okay. Now, I'm not disputing your cap rate, so we'll save the cap rate argument for another file. We included some photos. These are marketing photos. These are renovated suites for the staged for the purpose of marketing.
On the top of page 10, it's from Globe
Right.
PM.
Yeah, so it's from the owner's website marketing
Yes.
these units. Okay, perfect. And we can see that they're in very good condition. And they are clearly looking to achieve a higher rent because they've staged them. They're professional photos. Very nice. Okay. Now, you've included some financials here. And would you say then that by including this, these financials support our position versus the model's position, does it not?
I don't believe so.
Okay, those are my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, Doug, any questions?
None for me, thank you.
Well,
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Wong, do you know what the actual rents are? For suite style?
Page 12.
Okay, so the 2 bedrooms are about $1,500 a month. 1 bedrooms are about 12, let's say 1250. 3 bedrooms are 17, 16.
Well, it looks like it ranges between about maybe a little bit under 1,000 to 1,600 almost. 1577 might be the range.
1678, 1681 for the 3 bedroom.
Actually, If you look on the far right, that's probably the more accurate rental rate.
Okay.
Yeah, because the far right number includes concessions.
Okay.
So
that makes sense.
it ranges from about $947 to
Okay.
$1,577.
Okay, perfect, okay. All right. And it would appear that each suite pays their own electricity because there's a very low expense for the electricity. On the statement of earnings, okay. All right, other questions, thank you.
Okay, I'm just looking at the page 11, the vacancies. I mean, this is cash-wise. 19 in 2017 was a little over 5%. 2016 would have been higher,
Yeah.
and 15 and 14 vacancy rates getting up to 10% or more. So do you think the 2.6% adequately models the vacancy in this?
It appears that there is a difference. With the subject property appears to be trending in the direction of less vacancy. And the 2.6% is what our data indicates as being a market level of vacancy. And like I said, even when you include the 5% vacancy, the operating income is in line with the model, and that's kind of so. The model vacancy is a little bit lower than their 2017 actuals, but their operating income is in line.
Okay. But it would be fair to say that it appears that the owners have adopted a higher rent, higher vacancy sort of business model?
It is possible. Like higher rents, they can have slightly higher vacancy. But I guess even considering the higher vacancy, their operating income is in line with the model.
All right. Thank you. You can proceed then.
Thank you very much. Okay, Panama Courts at 785 Dorchester. Here we have 10 one-bedrooms, 3 2-bedrooms, and 12 3-bedrooms. And I will suggest that suite mix would likely give rise to a certain degree of vacancy. Now, the assessment department is suggesting an assessment of $2,889,000, which constitutes again a 16% increase over the last cycle, and we are suggesting that a value of $2,650,000 is more appropriate. The building was built in 1912. It is a character apartment. It's on Dorchester between Lilac and Arbuthnot. Again, it's 3 stories and presently being used as a multifamily res building. The site size, according to the City of Winnipeg records, is 15,000 square feet. And again, we have 25 suites with no parking. Now, these are factors that may lead to that increased vacancy, as you'll see. Okay, so for the purposes of this report, we are accepting the assessor's 6.6 capitalization rate. So if you'll follow me to my page 6, it looks like my page got cut off at the bottom a little bit, but this is my income workup. So, and this will carry forward for all of the files that we work on today. But our methodology is to take 3 typical years, and then 3 actual years, actual financials from the client, and these are the same financials that were submitted to the assessment department for the purpose of creating a model. And then what we do in that subject stabilized column is we try to model out what would be the most typical year. So this is a market view of this property. If somebody were to look at this as an investment, as something to purchase for the income stream in place, this is how the market views these assets. So you'll notice from the beginning, our potential gross market rents are higher than the city's model. We are at $371,701, where the city is at $368,661. But the city has applied a model vacancy of 2.4%. Now, we recognize that vacancy is going to be, over the economic life of this asset, we're going to have points where there's higher vacancy, we're going to have points where there's lower vacancy. So the purpose of this exercise is to capitalize that rate into perpetuity. Now, you can see, excuse me, in 2015, vacancy without factoring in bad debts and credit loss or whatever, we have 10.8%. It improves to 6.4% in 16, and in 17 it goes to 5.3%. Now I believe that someone on the panel has mentioned that when we have higher rents, and I believe the assessor agreed, higher rents tend to lead to higher vacancy potentially. So in the last cycle we saw higher vacancy and higher rents. Now what we're seeing owners do is depress some of those rents in order to curb that vacancy issue. So because we're doing a site-specific analysis of this property, we have to. There are some key factors that we can't negate in our analysis. We don't have any parking. We have a character apartment that is in excellent shape. I've been inside. I've had a couple of friends who have lived there. It's a very nice place, and it's costly to maintain this asset. But that's going to translate into a higher than average market rent. We're going to have to capture the fact that we have a number of 3-bedroom units, which is not, I would not say completely typical of the apartment universe in Winnipeg. So this is all going to lead to higher rent, and we're saying that if we're going to capitalize the vacancy into perpetuity, a 5% rate is more appropriate. Okay, so now that brings us to our effective gross rent. We're at $353,000. The assessor is at $359,000. So we're not worlds apart. We recognize that we do pick up extra income from parking. There's a parking income stream. This is where it's very interesting. We're almost dead on. We're at $359,193. The assessor's at $359,813. Now the substantial difference here, and I believe we've established that the model kicked out one number, and then somebody, presumably at the department, changed that expense ratio. And that's a model number where we are using actuals. So we say that our expense ratio is 51.3%. I'm going to suggest that if you look at the previous years, 73%, 58, 64, giving us an average of 65, that when we stabilize those actuals, they come to 184,273, which equates to 51.3% of our EGI. Which makes sense. It's absolutely typical that you would see an expense ratio north of 50% for an asset of this vintage. So with all those points taken into consideration, we believe that 47% has been adjusted by the city is aggressively low, and this is where we come to a material difference. Our NOI, based on actuals, is $174,920. After that adjustment by the city, the NOI is inflated to $197,01. Now, we're both using a 6.6 cap, so there's no argument there, there's no dispute. But the material difference that arises from that adjustment to the expense ratio is that we end up with a capitalized value of $2,650,000, where the assessor's at $2,889,000. So we are suggesting that a more appropriate assessment for this property for the 2020 assessment cycle is $2,650,000, and we respectfully submit that for the reasons contained in this report and in this presentation, that we adjust that value to $2,650,000. Thank you very much. Oh, and may I say one thing I spoke to you soon? Just at the back of I included the financials, but I've also done a permit search that goes back to the year 2000. And you can see that there was one permit, and it was replacing a defective single-zone fire alarm panel. So I don't think that would adjust the effective age or useful life. That would be general upkeep. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, questions for tomorrow?
It's just regarding your repair maintenance. How did you determine the capital expenditures when there was only one number?
How did we determine the capital expenditure? What number are you talking about?
Sorry, I guess your repair and maintenance.
Right. So we're at, in terms of a per suite rate, somewhere between 1,500 to 2,000, a little higher than 2,000 would be typical. Again, for all the points that we've mentioned here, we come to 2,400 per suite. So I don't see the repair and maintenance being out of whack. So
I wasn't saying that. I was just saying, it says R&M exclude waste, snow, and CapEx, but how did you determine that?
Oh, in the remarks?
Yeah.
how did we determine what was CapEx?
Yeah, because you stabilized at 59,000, even though
We
the average
excluded
is-
we have the owner's ledger, and we exclude any sort of expenditure that would constitute CapEx.
Okay.
And then $2,400 a suite, that's bang on. That's actually, that's very efficient for a building of this vintage that is in the condition that it's in. They've done a very, very good job of maintaining it, and they're doing it at a rate that I think is more than reasonable. So I think that 2,400 is it's the right number, and I think it's appropriate to use. And certainly to adjust it south of 50% doesn't make any sense to me, quite frankly.
So I guess repair and maintenance figures in that realm doesn't make any sense to you?
No, I'm saying for a building that's 107 years old, it's well maintained, that has a number of 3-bedroom units, you'd say to yourself it's in good conditions, above average condition. To have a expense ratio below 50% and to be achieving high rents, that all of these factors work together, so that it wouldn't make sense to me that it would be below 50. That would raise a red flag to me.
That's all my questions.
Okay, Doug, you any questions?
No, thank you.
Bob?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay, I was going to ask you how you stabilized your recurring maintenance, but you answered that, so thank you for that. We move down the street a bit to 742 Dorchester.
Can you start with tissue from the bottom?
Yeah.
All right. Okay, 742 Dorchester, you can proceed.
The subject property is 742 Dorchester. The roll number is 120-226-14000. It's a residential complex that's 2 stories high. It's built in 1923 and has 6 suites with 6 outdoor parking stalls. On page 2 is a sales history of the subject property. Sold for $500,000 in 2012. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use an average rent of $1,105 to get a potential income of $79,000. We use the 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $77,000. And we use the 44% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $43,000. Capped at 6.1%, we have an estimated market value of $707,000, which is $117,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables when the rent reviews are in line with what's on the market. And at the bottom of page 4 are some repair and maintenance comparables, showing market repair and maintenance figures to be about $1,224. On page 5, a summary of the income and expenses from the property owner. Once again, the repair and maintenance figures were very high, so I adjusted it to a market level of repair and maintenance, and their estimated operating income is $40,000. It's $40,000, and that's a little bit lower than what the model is estimated at $43,000. So, based off of that, I'd like to provide a revised value of $664,000.
Okay.
That's on the bottom of page 5.
So it's revised, what?
It's to $664,000 on the bottom chart.
Okay.
Yeah. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates and some cap rate sales. On page 9 is a picture of the subject property. Page 10 and 12 are the income statements provided by the owner.
Before you continue, how do you feel about the recommendation?
Our position was 659, so on the basis of quantum, 664 is fine with us. We will accept the recommendation.
Okay. Recommendation accepted, so I guess we don't need to proceed anymore on this one. Thank you for that. .665 quarter. You can tell when I think of what your number was. Actually, 665 quarter.
The subject property is 665 Corden. The roll number is 120-221-11100. It's a residential apartment block that's 2 stories high, built in 1955, and it has 6 suites with 4 indoor parking stalls and 2 outdoor parking stalls. Page 3 is our income valuation summary. We used average rents of $821 to get a potential income of $59,000. We used a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $57,000, and we used a 49% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $29,000. At the 4.8%, we have an estimated market value of $610,000, which is about $101,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent deferrals, so the rent reviews are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their estimated operating income is about $32,000, which is a little bit higher than what the model was estimated at $29,000. So their actual performance is in line and supports the model. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we direct our cap rates and some cap rate sales. Page 9 is a picture of the subject property. The remainder of my brief are the income and expense mailers provided by the owner. When you look at the actual performance of the property, it is in line and supportive of the model, so I ask you to maintain the assessed value at $610,000.
Any questions?
Any questions? Thanks. Okay. Are you aware of any substantial change that would have happened from last cycle to this cycle related to this property?
No.
So the economic conditions are effectively the same. Maybe rents have gone up a bit, maybe there's been some movement in the market, but would you say there's anything that would give rise to a 30% increase in value in this asset?
I'm not sure, but the thing is, sometimes we get this question at the department a lot, where it's like, I've done nothing to my property. How can it have gone up, 30%? And basically, yeah, that can happen where you don't do anything to a property and it goes up in value over 2 years.
Well, by the assessment department's metrics, not necessarily by the market's view.
Well, based off of the sales.
Okay, if apartments were like this, were appreciating by 30%, that would be outpacing most investment vehicles, would it not?
Well, the thing is, you're referring to like the previous number, and we haven't taken a look at the previous number, so it's difficult for us to say.
473.
Yeah.
Okay. Just a question. I think that if this is true of market behavior, we'd all be investing very heavily in apartments.
And
okay.
I think people are.
All right. Okay. So, and this is a 65-year-old building. Is that correct? 64, I should say.
My math is not great.
It's almost as old as I am.
55 to 19 is 64 years.
Okay.
And it's got 6 suites, right?
Yes.
Okay. Do buildings with lower suite counts have a higher or lower cap rate from the model's perspective?
From what we've observed, the sales of smaller buildings are getting a lower cap rate.
Okay. And this is, again, stick frame construction. Okay, that's fine. Now, and no change, no age variance, so is it safe to assume that this building is true to its vintage and there's been no permitted work that would substantially elongate the effective useful economic life of this asset?
I couldn't say.
Okay. All right. You've got sales here, but they're older. Can you tell us anything about these sales?
No.
Okay. 4 one-bedrooms, 2 two-bedrooms. Do you think that's an ideal suite mix, or is that a poor suite mix in the market speed?
Probably. I would say it's not bad.
Not bad. Okay. Now, what's really jumping out to me is this 4.8 cap. Is that model?
Yes.
Does that not seem aggressively low? Or
Not based off of what I've seen.
okay. All right. Now, you've done this, I'm calling it a shortcut, this income and expense summary on page 5. Now, I've corrected it and stabilized that income stream. It's actually 62,128. When you subtract your stabilized expenses, you come to 29,749, and we're actually at 30,000. So I think this supports our position in terms of the NOI. But all right, that's fine. Now, cap rates. We're going to be talking a lot about cap rates today. So let's. I'm sure all of you have heard Alta's position on cap rates in the multifamily universe this cycle. So I will give you the Coles Notes version. But I suppose my first question on your cap rate table on page 7, the multifamily. Are you aware that the first 3 sales that you've included in this table were purchased for the intention to renovate?
I'm not sure. Apparently, from previous hearings, I think they were renovated.
Right.
Some a little bit, some more.
Okay. And do you think it's appropriate to use an asset that was purchased for the intention to renovate, reposition on the market, try and get above the rental board? Do you think that is an appropriate input into a cap rate study?
Well, I think if it yields an accurate estimate, if it develops cap rates that accurately estimates market value, then, and if it is a market transaction, then I believe it should be included.
Okay, well, what we're talking about today are the in-place income streams for these multifamily assets. I'm going to suggest, and the municipal board has agreed with us, that when you include a sale like this, which is purchased with the intention to renovate, what you're calling a cap rate is tantamount to a discount rate or an internal rate of return. You're buying an economic opportunity. You're not buying an income stream in place. Would you agree with that?
Well, in this particular case, it's the relationship between the operating income and the sale price.
Okay, I don't think that's right. But okay, let's move on for a moment. Now, 500 Portage, you've included that as well. And I'm going to suggest that we're not going to see generally cap rates this low in the 4% range. We don't see that in the market. But you've included 500 Portage. I know that building well. I used to work there. That's commonly called Colony Square, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and Timber Creek bought it because it was an underperforming asset. Is that correct?
I'm not sure why they bought it, but they did buy it.
Okay, I've got the newspaper article here, but it's spent millions and millions on upgrades. Now that has, correct me if I'm wrong, 425 apartment units?
I don't recall.
85,000 square feet of commercial space?
It does have about 20% commercial space.
Okay, and a heated indoor underground parkade and a rooftop pool and patio. Is that correct?
I'm not sure about the pool, but
okay.
Yeah.
So you didn't.
If you say so.
You didn't look into this sale, then I'm guessing. Now, Timber Creek is the purchaser. You're aware of that?
Yes.
Okay. Timber Creek Asset Management, their business model is to purchase underperforming assets, to renovate them substantially, and then to reposition them in the market to drive a higher rent. So effectively, the point that I'm making with some of these smaller properties is exactly the entire business model of Timber Creek Asset Management. They buy underperforming assets, they reposition them, and they get them above they get the higher rent. So they've purchased the Medical Arts Building, but all in here, what's the other one? 160 Smith, 33 Hargrave, and 15 Arden. So they've purchased all these buildings. They came into Winnipeg in about 2010, and they're purchasing these assets for the purposes of renovation. Now, my point is, when you do that, you end up with these low cap rates, and they're not cap rates; these are discount rates. So, just want to make sure that we're all on the same page here. That's my question and my sort of spiel on cap rates. All right, have you visited this property? Subject property.
I don't believe so.
Okay, those are my questions. Thanks very much.
Okay, is there any questions? Tom?
Yes, Mr. Long. So, in these smaller apartment blocks, in your experience, do they capture a lower cap rate because they are more affordable to purchase?
It's difficult for me to say why.
Okay.
But what I can say is that it appears to be the case, and it's what our sales information is indicating, and that's why the cap rates for the smaller buildings are lower.
Okay. So a smaller investor is able to get into the...
Well, I mean, it would kind of make sense in that smaller buildings would be kind of a possibility for a regular person, and there's a lot of regular people around, so that are looking to get into real estate that's appreciating by 30%.
It's not appreciating by 30%.
I'm just.
And that's my second question.
Yeah.
Now, the agent has asked you about the increase in assessment. Is it possible that the property was underassessed on the last cycle?
Well, it is. I mean, that's why it's maybe not the best thing to look at the previous value, and we don't compare assessments, but the previous assessment was $473,000, but the previous assessment prior to that was $501,000, and so it's kind of a difficult thing to try to go back and forth on, but we can try to look at what we are looking at right now.
Yeah,
which is
you're
2020.
justified to look at this value. Okay, no other questions, thank you.
Okay, I'm just looking at the cap rate, and
Yes.
you're below the 20th percentile. Would it be fair to say that smaller apartments have more risk due to vacancy? A vacant apartment, if you got 85 apartments, it's not much of a vacancy, but it's one on when you only got 6. It's been vacant for any length of time. It's hitting your income.
Yeah, it does it does increase the vacancy, but once again, with regards to how that relates to what a property sells for, it doesn't seem to be, even though the risk on vacancy is higher, it doesn't seem to be hindering the what it sells for, and it still sells for, I guess, a reasonable amount, and from the sales that we've seen, they're at a lower cap rate.
Okay, then, did you have any sales to back up that statement?
I have seen some sales, and me looking at some of the sales where unfortunately they weren't here, but there was a cap rate in maybe the 3.8% range, and nothing happened to it. It just after sale, it just continued to perform as is, and so even though there were no renovations done to it, it's still sold for a lower cap rate. And with regards to, say, risk, there's a lot of talk about upside, and if there's an upside to it, then the risk is lower. So, I mean, when you look at it from the standpoint like a smaller building that has a lower cap rate, it is open to potentially work, and it's potentially open to an upside. And I guess maybe when you look at it from that perspective, the risk is a little bit lower because there is more of an upside.
Okay, I have no more questions, so thank you for that presentation. few doors down. And
Oh, man. Was that my?
sorry,
That's okay.
I can't think and share at the same time. Go ahead.
Just, we're talking about risk, and before I forget, I do want to say that the notion that a lower barrier to entry for an apartment building is somehow tantamount to less risk is backwards. A non-institutional investor who's not a property manager is going to likely have a very difficult time managing, operating, renting, collecting, and dealing with everything that comes with owning and operating an apartment building. It's not. It requires a specific skill set. So, and again, in a smaller building, the proportional vacancy, of course, is very high, as you pointed out. So, just want to point that out. Okay, so we are at 665 Corridor. Again, this building is built in 1955. The bones of this building are from 1955. It's stick frame construction, and there's been no substantial work to alter the effective useful life of the building. We've got 4 one-bedroom suites and 2 two-bedrooms. The city is suggesting a value of $610,000. We are suggesting a value of $513,000. So we're on the north side of Corydon, and we're east of the Hugo and Corydon intersection. This is the McMillan area. Again, built in 55 and being used as a multifamily residential building. According to the City of Winnipeg, the site size is 7,197 square feet, and it is zoned C2 for the commercial community. It is on Corydon. It's mixed among retail enterprises. So again, we have 4 one-bedroom units, 2 two-bedroom units, and there are 4 parking stalls in the rear of the building, and there are obviously outdoor stalls. Now, the assessment department is using a cap rate of 4.8% on this building. We're saying that is aggressively low, and we are suggesting that a typical cap rate for an asset of this vintage, based on our study, would be 6.25. But we do recognize that the building is well maintained, and that they've done some exterior work, the cladding, 2014. I visited this building and been inside a number of times, so I can speak to that. Now, so we are instead adjusting the cap rate to 6%, though we would typically use 6.25. So, I'm looking again to my workup. You can see we've accepted well, actually, we're not too far apart in terms of potential gross market rents. We're at $58,711 based on actuals, and the assessment department is $59,129. We are accepting the 2.4% vacancy. This building doesn't appear to have an issue with vacancy. It's the rents are correct, and it's marketed properly, it's positioned properly in the market. Our effective gross rent becomes $60,120. That should be down and readjusted, that's okay. Our effective gross income then is $65,868. We're higher than the assessment department. They're at $57,000. Now, we've used our actual expenses, and this equates to a repair and maintenance budget on a per suite basis of $1,625 per suite, which falls in line with what we'll call the acceptable range. Our expense ratio is 53.3%. The city is modeling 49.3%. And again, we get to an NOI of $30,783, slightly higher than the city's $29,265. So the material difference here is that we believe the 4.8 cap rate is too low, and when we capitalize our NOI into indicated market value, we come to a figure that's $513,000, and we talked about increases year over year. That constitutes an 8% increase. Now, if you take a look at my photos, you can see where we are, right next to the Mini Mart Foods on Corydon, very busy stretch. And again, we believe that, and I have the permits here. They've done some wiring in 2005, and then again a fire alarm control panel in 2016. So again, no substantial repairs, permitted repairs that would extend the effective useful economic life of the building. So we're recognizing that it's well maintained, and using a cap rate of 6%. So we respectfully submit that this board adjust this assessment to $513,000. Thank you very much.
Okay, questions?
No questions.
Doug, any questions?
No motion with that.
Well,
Good, yeah, thank you.
okay, so what they call indoor parking is garage, it looks like garage.
They built a sort of a garage type structure, and it's sort of communal, so it is atypical, but it's certainly an amenity. If you live there, it's better than especially on a day like this, than parking outside. So, and that would be reflected in the rents.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, now we can finally get to where I was at 10 minutes ago. $493.40.
Subject property is 493 Corridon. The roll number is 120-215-58000. It's a residential apartment block that's 2 stories high. It was built in 1961 and has 11 suites with 11 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $857 to get a potential income of $113,000. We use a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $110,000, and a 49% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $56,000. Kept at 5.1% for an estimated market value of $1,099,000, which is about $99,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, showing that the rents we've used on our line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. I've estimated their operating income to be about $51,000, which is a little bit lower than what the model is estimated at $56,000. So I'm recommending a revised value of $1,012,000. Which is on the bottom of page 5. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derive our cap rates. On page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. The last few pages are the income statements provided by the owner. So their actual performance supports the revised value, and that's I ask that you accept the revised value of $1,012,000.
Okay, any questions, Mr. Stern?
Yes. I'd like to proceed. I'm not accepting the recommendation.
I look at it and I presume so.
I do appreciate the spirit of the offer, and I will say that the revised NOI is likely. I don't agree with the methodology. I think that the figure, the quantum of $51,000 on the NOI is correct, but I simply I can't accept a 5.1 cap on this building. Okay, so we have now this building is very close to Confusion Corner, so it's sort of at the end of Corridon, correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay, so you haven't visited?
Yes, it is, sorry.
Oh, it is, okay. And again, actual year built at 61, effective year is 61, so from the department's perspective, there's been no substantial permitted work to extend the effective useful economic life of this property, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, now in the City of Winnipeg's valuation guide for income producing properties, one of the impediments to value that is noted is the suite mix, is that correct? Poor suite mix can impede value on an income producing asset such as this, is that correct?
I'm not sure about that.
You're not sure about the parameters in the City of Winnipeg's guide to value income producing properties?
No, are you saying that the suite mix is
I'm saying that there's only 2 bedrooms here, so that might be something that either that gets captured in the cap rate, or maybe we look at the, that might be something we consider when we're doing a site-specific analysis. Would it not? Do you having all 2 bedrooms is a positive suite mix or a negative suite mix?
I guess my view on that is that, if it's a poor performing property or if it has a terrible suite mix, then they're not going to be able to rent it out, or they're not going to be able to charge rents or high rents. But in this case, they're able to charge, reasonable rents. So I'm not sure how much of an effect that suite mix would have on that. And I'm not sure how suite mix might affect the model, but I do know that the model is affected by the size of the building. So generally speaking, larger buildings would have, if the average suite size is larger, then it's probably going to estimate a larger, higher rent.
So then do you agree with the document the City of Winnipeg puts out every cycle, saying that suite mixes could be an impediment to value?
It may have an effect on value.
Okay.
And how much of an effect, I'm
So
not sure.
puts it up interesting. Okay, now all these inputs, are they modeled on your income summary, page 3?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and now again, the expense rate, 49.29, does that strike you as low?
No.
No, okay. And the 5.1 cap rate, that's modeled as well?
Yes.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so you've heard my piece on cap rates. I'm going to suggest that this is an extremely low cap rate for this asset. So you haven't visited, but I guess even by the, these are the marketing photos. This is from the owner's website to market the property.
It's on the bottom, it's from Sussex.com.
And there's no interior photos on that site to show you what the interior looks like, so we can assume that it's what's called average condition, if not below average potentially.
I'm not really sure. You might be able to give us more insight into that.
All right. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Okay, John, any questions?
Just one, what is the vintage on this property?
1961.
Thank you.
Well, I'm trying to reconcile Mr. Story's page, your summary with the revised.
Right.
Yeah, so these numbers that you've got for the city, that represented the original workup, right?
I'm sorry, that Mr. Wong submitted?
Yeah.
Oh,
So
what we see is the initial assessment is $1,099,000, and we appealed based on that number.
Yeah.
And then Mr. Wong has come to this hearing and said the revised value ought to be $1,012,000, and that's based on an NOI of 51 versus 56.
okay, there we go. 51,635. That's the number we're looking at.
Right.
Okay.
And just for a point of clarity, my NOI is actually 51,336.
Right.
So
Got that.
it's
It's
cap
cap rate.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. That's my one question.
Since there's very little difference in NOI now, doesn't really matter in this property, but in terms of the expense ratio per suite, if you're to have larger suites, would you not expect more expenses per suite?
You might have a little bit more expensive, but the rents for them will probably be a little bit higher as well if the units are a little bit bigger, so maybe the ratios will remain similar.
Oh, yeah, true. Good point. Okay, I was thinking again, and I can't do that in the chair at the same time. Okay, you can proceed.
Thank you. Okay. So I'll be brief because we are really just talking about cap rate here. Now, it's important to recognize that there are 3 parts to cap rate. Cap rate is the numerical expression of risk, and it's based on the theory or the principles of anticipation. How durable is this income stream? Will it continue on to the future? Will there be threats to this income stream? Will I have to spend more money in the future to sustain this income stream? And then there's also the theory of substitution. So if I had another investment opportunity that gave me the same income stream that was perhaps more passive than owning an apartment building, I would likely go for I would invest in something that was less risky. So for an asset like this, 1961, and we've talked about expense ratios. This expense ratio, based on actuals, is 1,100 per suite. I'm going to suggest that's quite low, particularly because we don't have any bachelors and we don't have any one bedrooms. They're all two bedrooms. So with an asset with only two bedrooms, $1,100 per suite is going to we're going to look at that from a market perspective and say, okay, this is going to be below the average in terms of what they're spending to maintain it. So as an investor, I'm not given a sense of confidence in the property in that way as an investment. I'm given a sense of pause. So, and a 5.1 cap would be aggressively low for most multifamily assets. So we are suggesting, based on our study, that assets built in 1961 ought to carry a cap rate of 5 3/4 to 6. And based on all the points that we've considered here today, we're at the very close to the corner of confusion corner. It's noisy. It's not typical of what we would think of as a Corridon address. The building is older. There's been no permanent work that we're aware of. The extended useful life has not been extended. So we believe that in this scenario, a cap rate of 6% is wholly warranted. Now, we're within hundreds of dollars here on the NOI, so I think that's a moot point. But when we capitalize our NOI with our 6% cap rate, we come to $855,606, so we respectfully submit that this board adjust this assessment for this cycle to $856,000. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any questions, Doug?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay.
None for me.
Oh, all right. I just want to get a glass of water. Okay, let's. What's that? Ask when people want to have a break. So we'll go to 535 Gordon. And then we'll have a break after this property. Okay, you can proceed, Mr. Moore. This time I'm not reading out.
The subject property is 535 Corridon. The roll number is 120-215-53100. It's a residential apartment block that's 2 stories high. It's built in 1959, and there are 19 suites with 6 outdoor parking stalls. On page 2 is the sales history for the subject property. Sold in 2016 for $1,975,000. It's a little bit higher than what the model's estimated at $1,656,000. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We used average rents of $748 to get a potential income of $170,000. We used a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $166,000. And we used a 49% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $84,000. At the 5.1%, we have an estimated market value of $1,656,000, which is like $87,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, and that the rents we've used are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their estimated operating income is about $96,000, which is $12,000 higher than what the model is estimated at $84,000. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derive our cap rates. On page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. On page 10 are some interior photos. here of my brief are the income statements provided by the owner. When you look at the actual performance, it's a little bit higher than what the model is estimated, so it supports more than supports the model, and the sale price also supports a higher value than what the model is estimated. But I actually maintain the assessed value at $1,656,000.
Okay, any questions?
Okay. Okay, so again, now this is, I'm going to say this is fairly similar to the last property we looked at in many ways. This is 60 years old. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. So it's built in 1959, and the effective year built is 1959. So that would indicate that there's been no work that has given rise to an age variant from the city's perspective, correct?
Not as far as the department is concerned.
In your opinion, what is the effective useful economic life of an apartment building?
I think it might be about 60 years.
About 60 years, so we're getting to the end of the useful life of this asset, that's fair to say.
Pretty much at the end.
Pretty much at the end, right. Okay.
But yet it still generates income. Weird.
Well, okay. We're not suggesting it's not generating income. We're suggesting that the 5.1% cap rate is perhaps, let's call it optimistic. Okay, so we've got 19 one-bedroom suites. So, and your view is that suite mix is not a material issue when it comes to investing in apartments or how that affects market value. Is that correct? Based on what you said in the last slide.
From what I've observed, I mean, regardless of what the suite mix is, whether they're all bachelors or all 3 bedrooms, they seem to sell, and they seem to sell at a reasonable price. So, yeah, I guess it seems like a bad suite mix of all bachelors doesn't seem to stop people from buying them.
Okay. Now, the purpose of the exercise today is to do site-specific analyses on each one of these properties, correct?
Site-specific?
Yeah, that's what we're here for. We're here to look at the site-specific attributes of each property and then determine value, correct?
Here to look at each individual property, yes.
Okay. But we've used model parameters all across the board on your page 3. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
And they're the exact same parameters that we've used for the last one, and I think for a number that we're going to see today. Is that correct?
Yeah, it looks like it, yeah.
49.29
Yeah.
expense ratio, 2.58,
5.1.
5.1 cap.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now, this is interesting to me, and would ask this argument sort of carried forward. I don't have to do it every single time we look at a property here, but the rent comps. Do you have any sense of what the vacancy or the R&M ratios are in any of these comps?
No.
Okay, so it doesn't really tell us much when we look at the average monthly rent, but we don't know what the vacancy is or what they're spending to subtend that, does it?
I guess maybe that's not the purpose. The purpose is just to similar properties garner these types of rents.
Right, but we might say, well, hold on, that's what we don't know about, comp 1 is that the vacancy is north of 8% or something like that. So that
We
doesn't really...
wouldn't go into that depth analysis for the comparables, no.
Okay, and did you choose these yourself?
Yes.
And you inspected to make sure they're appropriate?
Just that they're similar in suite mix and age and similar location.
Okay, that's fine. Now again, I've taken your this workup that you've done and restabilized the income so as to not overstate it, to artificially depress the expenses, and we actually come to an NOI of $93,000, which is pretty much bang on where we are. But you're suggesting that the model, this model parameter, kicks out an NOI of $96,650, but originally it was 84,000. So that's, you're suggesting that the model was about 15% off in its assessment?
In this case, it appears to be a little bit higher.
Okay. Would that indicate to you that maybe some other parameters in this workup might be inappropriate?
Not at all. This is a model, and
Right.
And the thing
Right.
is, a model is not going to be able to accurately estimate, 5 different properties.
I
even
agree
though-
wholeheartedly, and that's why we do a site-specific analysis of each property. Now, to your cap rates, just one question here. When you developed this cap rate study, how many of these units that were purchased with the intention to renovate were included in your study?
I'm not sure.
How many properties were included in the study?
I'm not sure.
Okay. And do you have any supporting calculations for any of these numbers?
No, I do not.
Any documentation whatsoever?
Nothing other than what's been presented.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, other questions? Well,
Yes, thank you. Mr. Long, page 2, showing a sale in October of 2016. Any information on that? Is that an arm's length sale for this property, or?
As far as like a coworker looked into the sale, and it seemed to be a bona fide sale.
Okay, so one would assume somebody had done an analysis of income and offered and purchased the property based on that income.
Potentially, whether they did an analysis of income or not, it might not, it may or may not be the case, but they did determine that that's what it was worth. Because I've seen properties where they didn't look at the income, they just said, yeah, we'll give you $3 million. You want that? Okay.
But this is arm's length?
Yes.
Just under $2 million in 2016. Okay. That's my only question. Thank you.
all right. Any questions? So you can proceed.
Okay, so effectively, I think again we are talking about the cap rate for the most part. Well, we're just go through this quickly. We are a little bit off with the accessories that are adjusted NOI. Okay, so we are at 535 Corden. That's basically the corner of Nassau North and Corden, and that is on the north side. So again, McMillan area, we're built in 1959 with no substantial improvements to the property to extend the useful life. The site size is 7,197 square feet and it's zoned C2. Now our understanding is that it's actually, there are 5 bachelor suites and 14 one-bedroom suites. But there are also 5 surface parking spots on the side of the building. So I'm not sure where this 19 one-bedroom thing is coming from, but our records indicate we have 5 bachelors and 14 one-bedroom suites. Okay, just for a point of clarity. Now, the city again is using a cap rate of 6.1%. I'm sorry? Oh, 5, I'm sorry, 5.1, that's right, I'm getting ahead of myself here. The city's using 5.1, we're disputing that, and we're using a rate of 6.25. So our resulting market value is then $1,457,127, rounded to $1,457,000. Now again, we've provided our income workup based on the last 3 years of financial statements, and we've stabilized that into a typical year. And you'll see that our what's interesting here is that our expense ratio is quite low. It's 46.3%, which equates to about $1,261 per suite, which again would be low. So we're suggesting that this is not an asset that is maintained to the highest standard. It is certainly generating income, but it is at the end of its effective useful life. And so I believe we're of the belief that a next proven purchaser would look at that and that would give them some pause. And as the cap rate is the numerical expression of risk, the adjustment must be made to the cap rate. So we are going on the high end of our 6 to 6.25, applying a cap rate of 6.25, and again the indicated market value becomes $1,457,000. And we respectfully submit that the board can adjust the assessment. I have some current marketing photos as well as general photos of the subject. starting on page 9. This is the orientation of where we are. Page 10, these are the photos that are up online to market the property. And you can see that we're, average condition. We're not got new flooring, it appears. We have a standard apartment recording area, smaller galley kitchens. And so with all those points taken together, we believe that our analysis is fair and accurate, and that a assessment of $1,457,000 ought to be applied for the subject of the 2020 assessment cycle. Thank you.
Okay, questions, Mr. Wong?
No questions, just maybe, it seems like their leasing manager is indicating that it's 19 one-bedrooms.
The leasing manager, and that's on the financials?
Yeah.
Okay, that's...
Sure, if you want to update that in your records.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it does say 19. That's okay. So that's for the end of 17. I wonder if something. No. Let's go back a second. Yeah, I think that's an error on our part. Well, and that again, that speaks to the sweet mix. So I will adjust that in our records. Thank you for pointing that out.
Is that all your...
No questions.
Okay, Doug, anything?
No, thank you.
Bob?
Okay, thank you. Okay, Mr. Story, let's
Yes.
start with page 10.
Sure.
Pictures of the subject property.
Yep.
It looks like it's had quite a bit of renovations for a property that's nearing its lifespan.
Sure.
Do you agree?
Well, I would say that this would amount to decorating on some level. So when we talk about extending the useful life, we tend to think about the building's envelope, the roof, the foundation, the core sort of systems and bones of the building. It suggests that they're maintained, they're not in disrepair by any means. It's also a very competitive apartment market. There are tons of apartments here, so.
Would you call it well maintained for its age? Going on these photos.
Based on these photos, the interior, sure. Yes.
When were these taken?
Well, these are current. These are current marketing photos.
Current, okay.
Yeah.
Do you think this condition was in place at the time of the 2016 sale?
I would be speculating, but I would imagine that it would be, at the time of the 2016 sale. I don't know about the 2016 sale. I have not verified it. It does seem high, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, so the assessor stating that there was a sales check done by the assessment department confirming that it was an open market bona fide sale. So, and you're asking us to revise the assessment to $1,457,000. So how do you reconcile that with this purchase price of just under $2 million
Well,
in 2016?
I don't know if the assessor has provided any documentation that would show that that's a bona fide non-arm's length sale.
Or you say that he's got a sales check, the notes from a sales check that he read from.
Okay.
I believe, or he's discussed it with somebody who did a sales check on it.
Again, I haven't, I'd have to check it myself. I don't know if it was a share sale. I don't know if this was part of a larger.
Well, he's saying it was a bona fide arm's length sale.
Okay, but was it a portfolio sale? Were there a number of buildings that were sold at once and this was an allotment? I don't know. I'd have to check that myself. My initial reaction would be that that's fairly high, particularly for 2 cycles ago. So I didn't put any weight on that sale, but and I haven't seen any evidence that would indicate that it's a bona fide non-arm's length market transaction.
Okay. And the owner is Asteroid Management, I believe?
They're managing, yeah.
Asteroid, they own many properties in the city, is that right, Mr. Wong? Quite a few, I think?
Yeah, they manage a lot, and I think they're adding to their portfolio on a regular basis. Like this property, this property, from what I can tell, this was an estate sale. It was purchased by 535 Portland Limited, whose director is Cal Reach. Cal Reach is Asteroid Management, and so as far as I can tell, it was an arm's length transaction.
Sorry, you said it was an estate sale?
Yeah.
And do you know who the vendor was?
I don't know, but I have seen it where, like Cal Reach, because they manage it and they have that experience with a lot of properties, that sometimes when these types of situations come up, they're able to, I guess, purchase the property. So,
So are you saying that they were managing it and then they purchased it? Well, as they had the management contract?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, that would be non-arm's length, right?
Well, if they're independent parties.
Is it a sale and lease back? Do we know anything about the terms of the sale? That's why I'm saying we've got to be careful with that sale, especially when it seems so high to begin with. So I don't know anything about it, I'm just speculating. But you're saying an estate sale and they were managing it, so that automatically means it's non-arm's length, right?
No. If they're independent parties.
Notice if the parties are known to each other and they're engaged in a business relationship, that's a non-arm's length sale. Would be the definition of a non-arm's length sale.
Well, that's the information, that is the information that we have.
Okay. Okay. Any idea on the cap rate of on sale?
They, based off of our records, I think they indicated 5.4%.
All right, that's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay, just looking at the pictures, both interior on page 16 and then the exterior. Here's at least done window replacements on this. They appear to be vinyl windows or not.
I mean, yeah, they're not from the 60s, to be certain. They do have sort of there's two entrances, and they have that sort of very 1960s kind of effect. Those appear to be original to me, but the suite windows appear to be newer vinyl, from what I can see. Yeah.
And the cupboards don't appear to be 60 vintage cupboards.
No, they don't, but we don't know if they're
Yeah,
craft or IKEA, so
yeah, that's true. Well, if there's IKEA, there'd be extra screws lying around. You don't know what to do with it.
right.
My experience with IKEA. Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks.
We'll take a short 10-minute break till 3:05 again. All right, let's continue to 809 Corden. You can proceed.
I guess I looked up the definition, a more exact definition of arm's length. Yeah, so pretty much if you're like a family member, or if they're companies or subsidiaries of a company, or the relationships between a trust and a beneficiary, that might constitute a non-arm's length. If it goes between a professional property manager and a private owner, then I think they would be acting in their own self-interest, and in a situation like that where a property manager buys from a owner. They're not related. They just have a profession. Like the owner asking for professional services from a property manager. So I'm not sure if that constitutes a father-son relationship. But anyways, I was
Are you suggesting that an arm's length sale is only between family members?
No. Between, like, say, companies and subsidiaries.
Right. Okay, so you're suggesting that's not an arm's length sale?
I'm suggesting it is an arm's length sale.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
But you've got two firms who are engaged in a business relationship with each other. So, for example, let's just say...
Yeah, it's a professional relationship.
Right. And then
Professional.
parties are known to each other.
Yeah.
They have a relationship that has to do with that specific property, that asset, right?
Yes. And also, are they acting in their own self-interest? And I think that's the big thing. As long as the owner is trying to get the highest value and the buyer is trying to get the lowest value, then they're acting in their own self-interest.
Market value, right? Non-motivated purchaser, self-interested buyer, self-interested vendor. That's market value, right? So, if, for example, let's look at the example of a sale and lease back of a property, right? So, you're a tenant. I own the building, I sell it to you, but we have some creative financing around how we structure that deal. That's considered a non-arm's length transaction. And we don't tend to use those because the financing tends to be creative. So,
well, yeah, because that's related. But these two, I don't think there's.
The property manager of the company, you're suggesting that
Yeah.
the property manager purchased the asset
Yeah.
from the person who is employing him to manage that asset. And you're
Yeah.
saying that's not arm's length?
I believe they're acting in their own interest.
Okay, I'm going to
I think
suggest
he's saying that it is arm's length.
it is essentially.
Yeah, yeah, I'm saying,
I'm
yeah.
suggesting that it's not arm's length.
Yeah.
They're not.
Yeah, I'm just saying, you're saying that that was the definition, I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure, like, yeah, these two.
Okay.
But anyways, I just wanted to,
Let's move on to the 809 coordinate.
sure. The 809 coordinate is the subject property. The roll number is 120-978-03965. It's a residential apartment block that's 2 stories high. It was built in 1959, but we have an effective year built in 1974. There are 11 suites with 8 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rents of $1,010 to get a potential income of $133,000. We use a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $130,000. And we use a 45% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $71,000. That's at 5.1%. We have an estimated market value of $1,405,000, which is about $127,000 per unit. On page 4 are rent comparables showing that the rent reviews are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their estimated operating income is about $75,000. It's a little bit higher than what the model is estimated at, $71,000. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates and cap rate sales. Page 9 is a picture of the subject property with its location. Page 10 are some interior photos of the subject property. The remainder of my brief are the income statements submitted by the owner. So when you look at the actual performance of the subject property, it supports the model, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $1,405,000.
Any questions, Mr. Stern?
Yeah, just a couple. Okay. So, yeah, we visited this property.
I don't think so.
So, it was built in '59, and the effective year is '74. Are you aware of any permitted work that would have precipitated that change?
I'm not aware of any permits.
And how, just so we know, how do we, why 1974? Why not 1975? Or how do we come to that specific number?
I'm not too sure if it was the effective year that was assigned by the assessor that reviewed the property.
Right. Okay. So maybe they say, well, they've added 15 years of useful life or something like that. So it's an arbitrary, somewhat arbitrary, based on judgment. Is that fair to say?
I think so.
Okay. And again, we've got 11 one-bedroom bachelor suites. That's correct. Oh, I'm sorry, 11 one-bedroom suites.
Yes.
Okay. So we don't have a suite mix, we have one suite type. Now, the rents look to be supported by what the owner has submitted to you. Now, in the vacancy is modeled. We haven't made any adjustments for discounts, concessions, anything like that, have we? There's no consideration for that. I ask because there appears to be a relatively high number of discounts. The vacancy is low for discounts and bad debt is high.
Sorry, I'm not sure what the question is.
Did you review the financials to ensure that these modeled inputs are appropriate?
They seem to be in line with the model.
Okay. Well, they are the model, right? The financials, you have
Yeah.
reviewed them and they're in line? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the expense rate, was that altered?
I don't believe so, no.
So it came with a 45% even?
Yeah, I actually thought that too, but I actually looked and yeah, it just so happens that this particular one is 45.
Okay. And now I couldn't help but notice the market value per suite. The model is suggesting 127,727 per suite. Does that not seem very high, considering that they're all smaller one-bedroom suites? From what we can tell.
Sorry, is what high?
The market value per suite of 127,727. Bottom part of your value summary, page 3.
I would say it's definitely within the range.
Okay. And the cap rate again is model.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Not arguing the rents. Fine. Now, again, I've corrected your summary here on page 5, where you were at 135. When you stabilize it, it's 133.5, giving us an NOI of 73,000, which we're showing with the actuals is 67, but that's okay. Now, okay, the cap rate, we've spoken to that point. I suppose this is mainly an issue of the cap rate, so those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, those questions?
No, my question's been answered, thank you.
Bob?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, you can proceed with your presentation.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we're at 809 Corridon. Now, this building was built in 1959. From our perspective, because there has not been substantial work to change the effective useful life, we are treating it as though it's from 1959. And again, I've searched the permits. One thing that I saw here is in 2011, they did get a license for one unit to occupied as a care facility. So, but it says no building alterations, and judging by the reporting, I don't think that that's still a going concern. And in 2013, there's a replacement of existing defective fire alarm control panel, which is typical. We tend to see that in the apartments over the years. It's just a general upkeep type thing. Okay, so again, we're treating the building as though it's from 1959. It's 2.5 stories. It has 11 one-bedroom suites. And we are, again, between Lilac and Arbuthnot Street on the north side. And the site size is 5,982 square feet, and it is zoned C3. Now, the assessor is using a cap rate of, let's see, I believe 5.1. Yes, 5.1. We are disputing that and saying that a cap rate of 6% is more appropriate. Now, it's 59, but that's, so we've bracketed 46 to 59. We recognize that it is in reasonably good shape, from the inside at least. There's a demand for it. It rents. So we've applied a rate of 6% based on its vintage, for the most part. Now, the assessor has said the model is kicking out a rate of 45%. We're at 47.1. We're not terribly far off on our NOI. They're at 71,000. We're at 67. But with all points considered, we believe that the cap rate study that the city has done this cycle is aggressively low, and we believe that our table is more representative of a market view of these types of assets, and particularly these vintages. And I think we've all agreed that a 60-year lifespan is probably typical of an apartment building. So, with all those points considered, we've used a 6% cap. And when we capitalize our NOI of 67,000, we come to an indicated market value of $1,117,429, and we respectfully submit that the assessment ought not to exceed $1,117,000 for the 2020 assessment cycle. I've included the same photos in my brief as the assessor. We got them from the same place. You can see they're sort of smaller suites. We've got the galley kitchens. They've been maintained. No dispute there. And that's what allows them to achieve the $1,000 a month rent for one bedrooms. And I should point out too, it's all all one-bedroom suites, so there's not much of a mix there, which may equate to some risk. And the low suite count, of course, would drive a higher proportional vacancy. That's my presentation. Thank you very much.
Questions?
No questions.
Meg?
Yeah, it looks like there's been a fair number of upgrades done to the inside of the
Fair number of
upgrades.
upgrades. Yeah, they're maintained. Yeah, it looks like the suites have certainly been maintained. That's reflected in the rents.
And no permits were taken on this?
Nope, I've got the permit search here, and this goes all the way back to, well, it will say January 1st of 2000.
Okay.
And that's what the permitted work was. And that's generally when we see that the suites are, in good condition. We think of that more in terms of decorating, and that's a function of maintaining or tending the rent, as opposed to capital expenditures that work on the building envelope, the roof, the HVAC systems, or the foundation or something like that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, yeah, let's just deal with this permit. When you say there's no permits taken out, you're saying there's no capital project permits, is that right?
That we can see.
Yeah, because we see different property owners on the time, and often,
Yeah.
some of them will take out permits for renovating the suites, including
Okay.
replacing the cabinets and that kind of thing.
Okay.
Yeah, and decorating,
Right.
floor finishing, they'll make a or a project of redecorating.
Okay.
Take out permits to do it, and other property owners choose to
Would
not
that-
take them out. So to imply that there's no improvements because there's no permits taken out.
No, I'm not saying there's no improvements. I'm saying that these suites are in good shape, and that's reflected in the rent.
As shown in the pictures.
Right, yeah.
Yes,
Now, when you're saying about renovating or cabinets and things like that, does that have to do with electrical? Because that, my understanding would be that generally it has something to do with, altering the electrical system.
Well, we see all kinds, replacing
Right.
windows,
Sure.
Uh,
Building
interior-
envelope issues, yeah.
no, but windows, kitchen cabinets,
Okay.
that kind of thing, we've seen different.
Anything that alters anything within the suite
Right,
should have a permit.
right,
Electrical, plumbing,
right.
cabinetry.
Substantial upgrades that are not tacked on the decorating. Yes.
Like, I guess what I'm getting at, and Dave was saying the same thing, is this doesn't look like a 1951 building,
No, well, I mean, from the outside it certainly does.
but from the inside.
No, from the inside, but that's why they get the rents that they do. They have to, in a competitive market, they have to maintain a standard.
Okay. So my only other question is, Mr.
Yeah.
Story, we've got 2 years of NOIs declared at about $73,000 on average. The assessor's sitting at $71,635,
Yeah.
and you're down at $67,000.
Yeah, and that's because we have our effective gross income of 126,
Okay.
and then we subtract our expenses of 59,697,
Right.
and that's how we come to 67.
Okay, so why are their NOIs under declaration coming in $5,000 higher for 2 years? They've got
Oh, because they're not
75,000.
stabilized.
Okay, but they've got the assessor showed a
Yeah,
two-year span,
yeah.
and you're using 3 years?
Well, we tend to use 3 years. For this one, we had incomplete info for 16, so if it's not reliable, we won't add it, it'll be distorted. So we used 15 and 17. But I see what you're saying, like the average here, if you use these, are...
Well, I was looking at the
75.
assessor's presentation, actually.
Oh, okay.
On
Yeah.
page 5, where he's got information from 2016, I don't know, you don't have it, but
Yeah.
on his page
Why?
5 presentation, he's showing an NOI of 71,300 for 2017, and for 2016, 75,000. So we've got an average of 73,000 over
Right.
a 2-year span, and yet you're declaring, or you're using an NOI of 67,000.
Right, and that's because we've stabilized that column, and we've used the real stabilized expenses, so.
Okay.
I should say too, the expense ratio in 15 is only 43%, but then it jumps to 46%, but the actual on the stabilized approach is 47.1%. So I see what you're saying, but and again, we're not worlds apart on the NOI. So yeah.
Well, okay, let's look at that then. So we've got an expense in 2015 of 40 to 44%. we've got an expense in 2017 of 46,
Yeah.
and average is 45.1, so why are you using 47%?
Because that's the ratio between the 126,743 and 59,697. Yeah.
All right. Other questions? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm going back on that. Typically, what I've seen in the past is that you use the last year's income.
The last 3 years. They're the last 3 full years before the
No,
revenue statement.
actually, I've seen the last year income because that's reflective of the current rent that you're going to be generating after the allowable increases and all
Sure.
that sort of thing, which would suggest it should be 134.
134.
Your GI in 2017 was 134. And that makes it substantial.
Well, and that's
difference.
what the assessor is saying. What we're saying is, in 17 it's 129. That's our potential.
No, that's your average.
No, that's actual in 17 is 129,635. We have rental discounts of 1,212. So our potential is 128,423.
Yeah, and then by the time you add in your miscellaneous incomes, which is usually the parking and that.
Parking lot,
laundry,
yeah.
come up to 134.
I see, okay. Yeah, no, that's true. And then we use an average, so yeah, that's how we got to that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Good question.
All right, thank you. Just a little bit of Alright. Finding out Boardroom, and we're on to Gertrude. 550 Gertrude. And this was the one that you had suggested there was,
There's some sensitive information that I maybe should make sure is struck from the.
Have something in there?
Yeah, I don't necessarily want to say it on the record, may I show the assessor?
Sure.
So when we're.
Yeah, okay. Yeah,
could you show the recording
would I be
secretary?
able to, I guess, borrow some whiteout or?
Yeah.
Yeah, that works.
So the copies that end up in the public record, we want to make sure that that's.
Yeah, I was going to say for the final
So could
copy.
I know what?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's, sure.
These will just be shredded hard copies. They'll
Okay.
be record,
Yeah.
file copy.
Yeah, no, the one on record, just, if you could just wipe that out, that'd be great.
Certainly.
All right.
Okay, and I should say too, I have some rebuttal to submit for this, this one, specific to this document, so this file. Okay, sorry, Nancy, is that the rebuttal? Sorry, I'll make sure that's the right one.
Can we get to that after?
Yeah.
The rebuttal afterwards?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I just want to make sure it's straightforward.
1, 2, 3.
Yeah, just need my copy.
Yeah, you can have.
Thank you.
Okay.
The subject property is 550 Gertrude, the roll number is 120. 217-810-00. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It's built in 1960 and has 15 suites with 12 outdoor parking stalls. On page 2 is the sales history for the subject property. It's sold in early 2018. I kind of looked into it, and as far as I can tell, it was the same. The vendor and the purchaser were the same, so I don't think it is a arm's length sale. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. The average rent we've used is $625 to get a potential income of $112,000. We applied a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $109,000, and the 56% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $47,000. At the 5.1% there's an estimated market value of $929,000, which is $61,000 per unit. On page 4 are rent comparables, and the rents we used are in line with what's in the market, or probably at the lower end of the range for market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their estimated operating income was $65,000, which is about $18,000 higher than what the model is estimated. I would say substantially higher than what the model is estimated. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates. Page 9 is a picture of the subject property. The remainder of my document is the income statements provided by the owner. The actual performance is substantially higher than what the model is estimated, but I asked them to maintain the assessed value at $929,000.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay, questions?
Yeah. Okay, so I'll be brief. So I'm not we're going to suggest that the sale is modified. So we have a building built in 1960. Actually, your built is 1960. It's got some parking. It's got 15 suites. It's in a good location. Now, the model is kicking out an expense rate of 56.86. Why is that so high compared to the other properties we've looked at today?
Sometimes very, very similar properties perform very, very differently, and so we try to reflect it as best we can. And in this case, it seems to have estimated the expenses to be higher than average.
Is there some issue with this building? It doesn't appear to be. It's not a high-end building, is it?
Well, no. I mean, there doesn't even necessarily have to be an issue with the building. If you have two twin buildings that are beside each other, and one for whatever reason happens to generate much more income, and because it's more efficient or whatever, then we try to reflect that.
Okay, but you're modeling $625 as an average monthly rent between 1 and 2 bedroom units. That is extremely low, is it not?
Yes.
Okay. And so you've got an extremely low economic utility. This income stream is low. We've agreed on that. Your expense ratio is very high, but the cap rate remains 5.1. Does that seem logical to you?
Yeah, I think a lot of the risk is captured in the rent that it gets, and so to me it makes sense.
Okay. Now, you're aware that there was a sale in January of 2018, right before the reference date?
Yeah.
And you're saying that that's not indicative of market value?
Well, as far as I can tell, it was actually sold from Mark and Stephen Mazer to Mark and Stephen Mazer.
Okay, do you have any documentation that shows that? Because we looked it up and we didn't see that it was...
Oh, if you have something that says different, then...
I've got the Sabre workup. Okay, so now the other interesting thing here is you mentioned that it was, you have the income and expense submitted by the owner, but this is not an income and expense statement. This is for tax purposes, income tax purposes. Isn't
I
it?
said the income statement.
Right, but this is for tax purposes, correct?
This is what was submitted.
Right, and you don't have a history of income and expense mailers.
I believe this is what they submitted when we requested income and expense information.
Okay, so, and I've provided this rebuttal, and it's interesting, because I went through these numbers, and if you did find this is an interesting experience. The gross rents for 17 were 111,714, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and the expenses were 50,067, is that correct?
Yes.
That leads us to an NOI for 17 of 61,646, right?
I'm sorry, say that again?
$61,646.23 is the reported NOI in 2017, correct?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, and just for the sake of brevity, gross rents minus expenses for 16 were 72,663.94, right? Is that correct or not? Based on what you've submitted here.
Sorry,
This is in my rebuttal sheet. So
I'm not even.
Yeah. Oh, you can look at.
I'm not even looking at your.
Oh, you can look at this too. It's just a little blurry. It was difficult, but we worked out the numbers.
Yeah.
Okay. So for 17, we have an NOI of 61,646, and for 16, we have 72,663. So,
Well, sorry, yeah, I'm looking at your rebuttal right now. As far as I can tell, there was some interest expense that was included. If you look at my chart.
okay, where do you see that?
No, I'm just saying, if you look at my page 5.
Yeah, that's not, no, that's, when you take the, here, if you go through this chart, your page, it's called page 10, okay. So we have the potential rents, the gross rents at 111,714. It's right at the bottom of the page.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. And then they report their insurance, interest and bank charges, management, repairs and maintenance,
Yeah,
property taxes, right,
Yeah.
and utilities.
yeah, so their total expenses are 50,000,
Right.
which I have.
Right, okay.
And then I remove their interest expense.
Okay. That's fine. So we get to an NOI by our calculation of 67,000, and the sale price is 890,000, right? So the point of this exercise is to show you that the capitalization rate, the formula to come to a cap rate, is to take the net operating income and divide it by the market value, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so then we can impute a cap rate on this property of 7.55% based on what you've submitted.
Well, like I said, as far as I can tell, it was Mark and Stephen Mazer sold it to Mark and Stephen Mazer.
I don't have any evidence of that. All I have is a Sabre listing. that
No,
shows
but do you know who the purchasers and vendors were?
No, I don't know. who the
Oh, okay.
purchasers and vendors are. But it's our opinion that the sale price is the market value on the date. So those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Doug, any questions?
No, thank you.
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah, so I say that's an unusual format for the financials to be put in, but
Well, I think some people, provide income, like property management income statements, and some people provide CRA income statements.
yeah. Okay, you can proceed with your presentation.
Okay. Very short. Again, it's interesting to see that the imputed cap rate on that property is 7.5%. I think it speaks to a larger point that I'm making across this docket. For the purposes of this exercise, we are suggesting that the sale is the value. So we request that the value be adjusted to $890,000 based on the fact that the sale occurred at the reference date, and it would be most indicative of market. And now the other interesting thing there too is that the previous assessment was $890,000. So it seems like that's a reasonable rate. We're not asking for for much, but we do think that 890 is more indicative. Thank you very much.
Okay, questions? Doug, any questions?
So, Mr. Stoll, you've got no work up at all?
No, we didn't have the financials. We don't have access to their tax. That's a tax form. That's not a income expense. So this is a new client for us. So we have the sale, and that appears to be indicative of market value.
Even though it might be between family members?
Well, that's the first I'm hearing of this, and I did reach out to the department about a week ago to see if their thoughts on this, and I do have a saver list, or a saver reporting, and it's been my experience that it wouldn't generally be an MLS sale if it were private like that. So I don't have reason to believe that it's fraudulent.
Okay.
I apologize. I should have gotten back to you when
It's okay.
when
No,
I
we're all
logged
busy.
it. It wasn't.
Yeah.
I don't mean for this to be a sort of, I guess maybe a blindside or whatever. The next time I get in this situation, I'll
No,
call
it's
you.
just we saw the sale raise the reference
Yeah,
statement,
yeah.
and it seemed like, okay, we can, and for the sake of, expediting these hearings, it would be good if we could come to terms as much as possible. I think we generally do a very good job of working together, Mr. Wong, so I think we're okay.
Okay, let's go to 626 McMillan Avenue.
The subject property is 626 McMillan. The roll number is 120-221-26100. It's a residential apartment block that's 3 stories high. It's built in 1960. It has 22 suites with 13 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3, their income valuation summary. We used average rents of $866 to get a potential income of $228,000. We used a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $223,000. We used a 49% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $113,000. Capped at 5.3%, we have an estimated market value of $2,136,000, which is $97,000 per unit. On page 4 are our rent comparables, and the rents we used are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is a summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their estimated operating income is about $116,000, which is a little bit higher than what the model is estimated at $113,000. So I believe their actual performance supports the model. On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates. On page 5 is a picture of the subject property with its location. Sorry, page 9, sorry. The remainder of my brief are the income statements submitted by the owner. You go back to page 5, where estimated operating income does support the model, and I ask that you maintain the assessed value at $2,136,000.
Okay, questions?
Yeah, okay, so this is going to be, again, mostly on cap rate, what I'm seeing here. Now again, this building is 59 years old.
Yes.
Okay, and the city has not provided any variant to adjust its age.
No.
Okay, and this is interesting, there's no basement in this building, is that correct?
It appears not.
So then, when we don't have a basement in an apartment building, then presumably all storage has to be done in suite or off site, is that correct?
I couldn't say.
Okay. Generally, apartment buildings will have some storage lockers or areas?
Well, they may have taken, I mean, who knows, they may have taken some area out on the main floor. I'm not,
Right.
so that's why I say it's difficult to say.
All right. Now, the value summary, these are all modeled, is that correct? All these inputs are modeled?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Did you prepare this brief?
Yes.
Okay. So, you don't know if they're modeled then, or did you adjust any of these, or did you?
I did not adjust anything.
Okay. So the model generated this this assessed value, is that correct?
It's possible somebody may have reviewed it, but I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Now, this building has a 5.3% cap, but it's very similar to a number of buildings that we've seen today. So that's a 20 basis point adjustment. Do you know what would have given rise to that? Is there something about this building that's inferior to the others, or there's some other increased risk that's occurring here? What can you tell us about that?
I believe the cap rate is higher because this building is a little bit larger than some of the other buildings that we've had so far.
It's got 22 units, correct? So that's kind of in there. Okay, that's fine. Now, in the original workup, you were at 113 in terms of NOI. I'm at 109.9. Now you've done this summary on page 5, but again, the expenses are increased and the income is, the expenses are decreased and the income is overstated, but when you stabilize them, you actually come to 111. So I'm at 110, you're at 113. That's okay. So basically, this is all on cap rate. Now, this is all the city is willing to provide the ratepayer in terms of cap rate information. There's no supporting calculations, background documents, or anything of that nature.
This is what we're providing.
Okay. You can't tell me about the amount of buildings of this vintage that were included in the study?
No.
How about the buildings of this size?
No.
Buildings in this location?
No.
Okay. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, Doug, questions?
No, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, I have no questions, so we can proceed, Mr. Stone.
Thank you very much. Okay, 626 McMillan. So this building was built again in 1960. It's a 3-story walk-up with 3 bachelor suites, 7 one-bedrooms, and 12 two-bedrooms. Okay. The city is suggesting an assessed value of the April 1, 2018 reference date of $2,136,000. We are instead suggesting that a more appropriate value is $1,833,000. Now, again, this is largely based on the cap rate argument. So the subject property is located at the corner of McMillan and Daly, presently being used as a multifamily residential building. The site size, according to the city of Winnipeg, is 12,049 square feet, and it's zoned R2. Okay, so the assessor is using a 5.3 cap rate, and we are suggesting that a building, again, as we've seen a number of times today, a building of this vintage, 1960 to 1974, is our bracket. We're suggesting that falls within the range of 5.75 to 6%. That is clearly that's the beginning of that bracket, so it's older in that range. So we've applied a rate of 6%. Now, again, we are not worlds apart on the NOI. The assessment department's actually a little higher than us in terms of the expense ratio. They're at 49.3. We are at 48.7. That equates to $1,200 per suite. That is reasonable and within the range, if not slightly low. With all those points considered, we again have used a 6% cap rate, which gives us an indicated market value of $1,832,838. So we ask that the assessment be adjusted to $1,833. Now I've got some photos. This is all they're using for marketing photos. It's simply a photo of the exterior. Got an aerial view so you can see where we are. Good location in general. Competitive multifamily universe in that area, and an older asset. Okay. I've also searched for the permits, and I see that there's a smoke detector permit in 2010. They've done Power Smart car receptacles and some additional plumbing way back in 2009. The balances of this report are the financials, including rent rolls, And again, this is primarily an issue of cap rate. We are suggesting that 5.3 is too low, 6% is more representative on a market view of this property, and we are suggesting that a value of $1,833,000 is appropriate. Thank you.
Okay, questions?
No questions.
Doug, questions?
No, I was just gonna ask for permit, if that's okay. Thank you.
Hi, yeah, thank you. Mr. Story, page 6 of the summary.
Yes.
Top left-hand corner,
Yep.
there's a figure of $2,013,000. Is that the 2018 assessment?
That's the 2018 assessment, I believe.
Okay,
Yes.
and so you're suggesting the value has gone down from the last cycle?
I am going to suggest that, now I don't know if we handled that property, you can see it says no VOR, so I would suggest that we probably wouldn't agree with that value as well, so.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you for that. Second last property is 478 Boardroom.
I think we might make this one quick.
Yeah, I think this is an easier one.
Okay.
I just looked at the applicants and our numbers are within $1,000. Our values are within $1,000 of each other, so
You mean your recommendation?
yeah.
Okay, just lead us through your recommendation on
Sure.
page 5.
The roll number is 478, or sorry, the subject property is 478 Boardroom. The roll number is 120-216-76000. If you go to my page 5, their estimated NOI is approximately $102,000, which is noticeably lower than what the model is estimated at $130,000. So I'd like to recommend a revised value of $1,554,000 based off of the NOI of $102,000. And I believe the applicant's number is very similar.
Okay, and I take it you're accepting.
I'm accepting the quantum, yes.
We'll just put 29. So the age of the structure then is why it's gotten to 6.6%?
It's because of the age.
Okay, thank you. And 671 McMillan. Okay, and I see you have a rec. So you may proceed on McMillan.
The subject property is 671 McMillan. The roll number is 120-221-43000. It's a residential apartment block that's 2 stories high. It was built in 1960 and has 19 suites with 17 outdoor parking stalls. On page 3 is our income valuation summary. We use average rent of $880 to get a potential income of $200,000. We use a 2.4% vacancy to get an effective gross income of $196,000. We use a 49% expense ratio to get a net operating income of $99,000. At that 5.3%, we have an estimated market value of $187,000, which is about $98,000 per year. On page 4 are our rent variables, and that the rent reviews are in line with what's on the market. On page 5 is the summary of the income and expenses submitted by the owner. Their estimated operating income is about $92,000, which is a little bit lower than what the model is estimated at $99,000. So I'd like to provide a recommended revised value of $1,742,000.
Okay, how do you feel about that number?
I appreciate it, but I would like to pursue.
On page 6 and 7 is information on how we derived our cap rates and cap rate sales. On page 9 are some pictures of the subject property, and on page 10 are some interior photos. The remainder of my brief are the income statements supplied by the owner. So the actual performance supports the revised value, and I ask that you accept the revised value of $1,742,000.
Okay, questions?
Thank you. Okay. All right, so again, I'll ask you, we're built in 1960, effective year is 1960, so no work that's been done to effectively alter the effective life of the building, is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay. From the model's perspective and the city's perspective, this building is true to its vintage, is that correct?
Yes, as far as we know, yes.
Okay. It's Class D construction?
Yes.
All right, and now I haven't calculated it out with the new value, but the model was suggesting a rise in value over the last cycle of 18%. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so your value summary, page 3, I'll ask you again, are these all modeled, or did you overwrite any part of this?
Well, page
Page 3, I'm sorry.
He's not defending the page 3 value.
Okay, well, we're still looking at the vacancy of 2.4, the capital 5.3. Those are modeled inputs as well as the expense ratio?
Yes.
Okay. That's fine. Now, all right. Now the adjustment that you made was based on an adjustment to the NOI?
Yes.
And your new NOI then is 92,000?
Yes.
Okay, so that's well in line with where I'm at 91.9. So that's fine. So effectively this is cap rate that we're talking about. Okay. Now, we haven't talked about this yet today, but you've included in, I think, all of your briefs here, the third-party broker studies in terms of cap rates?
Yes.
Okay. So, if you follow me down to multifamily, the fourth one down, it's safe to say that this would be a low rise, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and now, what's interesting is the third-party brokers, they only deal with what we call investment-grade properties. Is that correct?
I'm not sure.
Okay, and are you aware that they usually include things like land transfer fees and other costs when developing these studies that actually it sort of depresses them? Are you aware of that?
Potentially Colliers. I'm not too sure about CBRE or Cushman.
Okay, that's fair. Now, would CBRE, in your estimation, call this a low-rise A or a low-rise B?
I'm not sure.
It's hard to say. I agree, but I mean the location would certainly be desirable in the Winnipeg market, but the age would be of some concern, though it does appear to be maintained. Regardless, all that being said, third-party brokers, whose evidence you've included here, would suggest that a cap rate of 5.5 to 6% is appropriate if we can assume that this is a investment-grade property, correct?
That's what it says, yes.
Okay. And I'm using 5.75 and you're 5.3. Okay, that's fine. Now, we've established that we don't have any supporting calculations or information to back up this cap rate evidence. Is that correct?
This is what we provided.
Okay. And is it fair to say that perhaps these cap rates that we're using this cycle may be depressed because we've included at least 4 here that I can see that were purchased with the intent to renovate?
We're kind of going over the same ground.
I just want to wrap it up. I'm almost done. Okay, just want to reiterate. That's fine. Okay, you got your photos. That's good. So this is basically a cap rate argument. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Okay, Doug, any questions of the assessor?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, so you can proceed then.
Sure. Quick, 671 McMillan. Again, we're very close on our NOI. This is effectively a cap rate issue. We've got a building built in 1960. The suite mix is 10 bachelors, 9 one-bedrooms, 2.5-story walk-up. Now, we are presently being used as an apartment building, multi-family res, and site size is 12,037 square feet. We're zoned R2. Okay. Now, the assessor is using a 5.3 cap. We're using a 5.75 cap. Now, that's based on our bracket of 1960 to 1974 that we've provided here. So we do recognize that this building is in reasonably good condition. We've seen the interior and it seems to be maintained. The R&M is reasonably low, but perhaps it's been maintained for most of its life. I don't know. I'd be speculating. The R&M is $1,100 per suite. Regardless, based on our study, the broker studies, what we're seeing in the market, we are suggesting that a 5.75 cap is reasonable and ought to be applied. So that brings us to an indicated market value at the reference date of $1,599,000. I've provided some photos starting on page 9. This is Crescent Towers, you may know it. It's been around for a long time. It's a sort of a classic apartment building in the Gordon area. We've got some interior photos as well. They appear to be maintained to a standard that the market would bear. Now I've also looked at permits for this property. That's on my back page. And you can see we've got 15, 16, and 18. There's permits. Done some rewiring to change to replace the 400 after service to a new 600. Additional wiring. They put in 2 CCTV cameras in 15. There's a panel replacement and some additional plumbing and backflow prevention devices. So again, the building's maintained. We're not arguing the NOI. For the most part, we're close enough that it's not a material issue. The issue here is that the cap rate ought to be at a minimum of 5.75 and not 5.3%. Thank you very much.
Any questions, Mr. Wong?
No questions.
Doug, questions?
No further permits were taken out on that, like windows?
No, that's what we have. And that is up to current day, and it goes back to January 1 of 2000. So that's, yeah.
No questions, thank you.
I have no particular questions other than to note that they call me a 3-story apartment block a tower. But
Oh, no, I think oh yeah, it's hilarious. I think you have to be 5 stories at a minimum to be considered a tower.
especially when the first story is one of those ones that's actually in the basement.
Yeah, I suppose that's marketing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
May I sum up my
Sure.
quick submission? I thank you, gentlemen, for listening to our appeals today. And I just want to reiterate, without sounding like a broken record, that I do believe that the cap rates are aggressively low from the city's perspective this cycle, and I suspect that it has something to do with including those sales that we talked about that were purchased for the intention to renovate. And then I will also just point out that the burden of proof is on the assessor, and there is no backup, no calculations to the cap rates that are being used, just simply a table. We provide you our cap rate study. We have a repair and maintenance study, as well as a rebuttal document showing that the assessor's inputs for the initial cap rate study are inappropriate, and so I would ask that that the assessor's cap rate information be disregarded, and based on the fact that the burden of proof has not been satisfied, nor met. Thank you very much.
Do you have a submission you wish to do?
Quick. With regards to our cap rates, what it boils down to is, are the cap rates good estimates of value? Our particular cap rates are good estimates of value because our model is, the estimates of value are like 0.991 in terms of ratio comparing the assessed value to actual sales. And so basically what that's saying is that the estimates of value that the model spits out are accurate, and so the cap rates are accurate estimates of value. And I guess that's all I can say about the model and how accurate the cap rates are in estimating value.
Okay. All right, so thank you very much. That concludes today's hearing. So thank you for your excellent presentations.